You think your wedding day was stressful? Wait until you hear what happened at my best friend's wedding. My name is Tolu, and before I tell you what happened at my best friend's wedding, let me take you back. Back to where it all began? Back to the laughter, the dreams, the tight friendship and the perfect storm we didn't see coming. Adanna and I have been best friends since university. We met during our first week at Unilag 2 Lost Girls, trying to find the registration block and accidentally walked into a departmental meeting for final year law students. We were both confused, embarrassed, and trying to pretend like we knew what was going on. When the meeting ended, we laughed our heads off outside the lecture hall, and from that moment, we were inseparable. Adanna was everything. I wasn't bold, confident, the kind of girl that walks into a room and everyone turns, not because she was loud, but because she was luminous. That girl had presence, but under all that glow was a deep, deeply loyal soul. She had this unshakable faith and love in people and life. We called ourselves the brains and the beauty, a joke, of course. But secretly, I admired her. The way she wore her heart on her sleeve, the way she loved so deeply even after being hurt. So when Adanna met Kelvin during her NYSC year in Enugu, I was the first person she told. She said, "Tolu, I think this one is different." Now, let me be honest. I didn't trust men named Kelvin. I don't know why. Maybe it was the way she said his name, like a prayer and a dare, or maybe it was the way she paused before describing him, like she was already trying to convince herself he was perfect, but I kept quiet. I watched the relationship blossom, mature, and solidify. He was charming, that one. A banker, tall, well-spoken. He remembered my birthday every year and sent Adanna flowers every Friday like clockwork. He was the guy that made her believe in fairy tales again. So when he proposed, we all screamed, cried, danced. It felt like we were all getting married. Adanna was just the bride on paper. The planning started almost immediately. Pinterest boards, wedding, WhatsApp groups, budget fights with parents, secret arguments with vendors, and, of course, the matching ASO EBI drama that nearly destroyed friendships. I was her maid of honor. Kioma was in charge of food, Bola did decor, Tenny handled logistics, and Yugochi, bless her soul, took care of social media and PR. We were a dream team. We even gave ourselves a name, the Bridal, Avengers. Every weekend we gathered at a place with notebooks and wine. We'd spread out magazine clippings, cake samples, and glittering swatches of lace on the dining table. Like generals planning a war, we laughed about the future. Who would catch the bouquet? Who would cry first? At the wedding, we even made bets about whether Adanna would do the ugly cry during her vows. Spoiler alert, we were wrong. So wrong. The wedding was set for April 16th, at one of the most beautiful garden venues in Lekki. Picture this. White chairs lined under palm trees, gold table settings, strings of fairy lights woven through the branches, and a floral arch so dramatic it looked like something out of a Nollywood movie. Guests were flying in from Port Harcourt, Abuja, the UK. We booked a huge Airbnb villa nearby for the bridal squad. 2 nights of girl time wine, gossip, last-minute sewing, and one emergency fix for a torn gel. But above everything else, the joy in Adanna's eyes, that was what made everything sparkle. You know how some people look like they're glowing from the inside? That was her, the night before her wedding. I caught her standing on the balcony in her silk robe, looking out at the city lights. Her back was to me, but I could hear her whisper, "This is really happening." I smiled and said, "You deserve it all, Ada, every bit of it." And she whispered back, almost too soft to hear, "I just hope nothing ruins it." If only we knew what the next 24 hours would bring. The morning came with sunlight and music. We all woke up to Afrobeat and the smell of fried plantain from the kitchen downstairs. Tenny was already playing Hype Woman, shouting into a pretend mic, "Lagos, are you ready for the wedding of the year?" We laughed and danced around in oversized shirts, curling irons in our hands, mimosa in our cups. The makeup artist came, the hairstylists came, photographers came with lights, tripods, reflectors. Everything looked like a reality TV show. Adanna's gown hung by the window, a masterpiece of lace and beadwork. Her mother sat quietly on the bed, tears in her eyes. Even her father, usually stiff as a board, smiled as he peeked in, holding his camera. And when Adanna finally stepped out of the dressing room, hairstyled into an elegant bun, tiara gleaming, lashes fluttering, silence, everyone just stared. She was breathtaking. "I'm going to marry the love of my life," she said. And we all screamed again like teenagers. No one could have guessed the kind of chaos that was brewing. Behind the scenes that day was about to become unforgettable, but not for the reasons we imagined. It started with a knock, a small, unsure knock on the villa door. It was just before 9 a.m. The sun fully risen, the sky clear, and we had exactly 3 hours left before the wedding ceremony. The house was buzzing, hair straighteners heating up, lipsticks being swapped. Someone was ironing a last-minute blouse. The air smelled like hairspray, powder, perfume, and nervous excitement. Then came the knock. Chioma opened the door casually. I was upstairs helping Adanna with her earrings when I heard her say, "Wait, what?" She called out, "Tolu, you need to come down now." I rushed down, expecting it to be the photographer complaining about light or something, but instead, standing in the doorway, still in her bonnet and wrapper, was Adanna's younger sister, Ifeoma. Her slippers were mismatched. She looked like she hadn't slept, and her hands were shaking. "The venue," she started, then paused. "What happened?" I asked. Ifeoma looked from me to Chioma. "There was a fire." Time froze. My brain couldn't even register the words. "A what?" I asked, blinking. "Small fire," she stammered. "But it damaged the reception area. They said something about the generator. It caught fire around 3 a.m. I just stood there blinking. Then Chioma grabbed her car keys and we jumped into her Toyota Matrix, still in our pajamas. Ifeoma got in too, and we drove straight to the venue. No makeup, no brass, just fear and adrenaline. The moment we turned the corner and saw the venue gates open wide, with smoke-stained drapes hanging outside, my stomach dropped. Inside the compound, there was chaos. The decorators were running around, pulling down what was left of the floral arch. One section of the reception tent had collapsed. The white chairs we had paid premium for were covered in soot, and the wedding cake, the grand 5-tiered beauty from one of Lago's top bakers, was sitting on a crooked table, melted and leaning like it had survived a bomb blast. I covered my mouth. Chioma whispered, "Jesus." One of the vendors, a short, muscular man with sweat dripping down his bald head, approached us. "Good morning, madam. We're handling it." The fire only affected the left side of the reception. "The rest, where's the event planner?" I asked, cutting him off. He pointed to the corner of the compound where a woman in a blue jumpsuit stood barking instructions into a walkie-talkie. I stormed toward her auntie Tola. "What happened?" She looked at me and sighed. "Tolu, I don't know how this happened. The caterer's team plugged 2 electric fryers into the generator. It overheated. The generator caught fire. Security put it out quickly, but we lost one whole panel of the tent, some floral setups, and the cake. I'm really sorry." I stood there breathing hard. "How bad is it?" She hesitated. "Bad, but manageable. We're rushing extra hands to rebuild what we can, but it'll delay us. I don't know if we'll be ready by 12. I looked at the time. 9:40 a.m. We were supposed to start taking pre-wedding photos by 10, ceremony at 12, reception at 2. I wanted to scream. Chioma stepped closer and asked, "What about power? Is the generator still usable?" "No," Tola said. "We're bringing another one. The DJ just found out and said he won't perform unless he's sure there's power. And now he's not picking his calls." I felt lightheaded. "What about Kelvin? Does he know?" Tola hesitated again. "Tell me. He was here earlier. He saw everything." My heart sank. We rushed back to the villa. Adanna was sitting in front of the mirror with a makeup brush halfway to her cheek. She looked at our faces and dropped it instantly. "What's wrong?" Nobody spoke. I knelt beside her. "Ada, there was a fire." Her eyes widened. "Not a big one," I lied. "But the reception area is a mess. The cake's gone. The tent is damaged, but they're fixing it." "The cake is gone," she whispered. "And the DJ hasn't shown up," Chioma added, biting her lip. Adanna blinked slowly. Her hand trembled, and she reached up to touch her earrings like they could hold her together. Then she stood up slowly and said, "Okay, just okay. No screams. No tears. Not yet." But I knew something inside her had cracked. By 11:30 a.m., guests were beginning to arrive. Some had flown in from out of town. Others came in Uber rides dressed in coral lace, fanning themselves under the sun. The groomsmen were sweating through their suits, and the ushers were handing out water bottles in panic. Kelvin hadn't arrived. The DJ hadn't arrived. The priest was stuck in traffic, and the bride, she sat in the car with her head on my shoulder, staring at nothing. "I just wanted one good day," she whispered. "You'll still have it," I said, though my voice broke. "We'll fix it. We'll dance tonight. We'll laugh." But I didn't believe it any more then. Just when we thought it couldn't get worse, she arrived. A woman, tall, stunning, curvy, in all the wrong ways for a wedding. She stepped out of a red Toyota Corolla with the engine still running, dressed in a fitted gown and 6-inch heels, sunglasses covering her face. On her hip was a child. A toddler, maybe 2 years old. She walked straight into the compound like she had been invited. I watched from a distance as she approached Kelvin's parents. People began to whisper. Someone pointed, then someone shouted who invited her. Kelvin's younger cousin tried to block her, but she raised a hand and said calmly, "I'm here to speak to the groom." When she spotted Kelvin, yes, he had just arrived, flustered, sweat-soaked, shirt unbuttoned, and phone glued to his ear. She stormed toward him. What happened next felt like a scene from a badly written soap opera. She pulled out an envelope, thrust it into his chest. "This is yours," she said. "What is this?" Kelvin barked. "Your son, and his DNA results." Silence. People stared. Someone gasped. One of the flower girls burst into tears, Adanna, watching from the bridal car. Slowly opened the door and stepped out. She didn't run, she didn't cry. She just walked toward them. Then she looked at Kelvin and asked just one question. "Is it true?" Kelvin swallowed, looked around, and didn't answer. He didn't say yes, he didn't say no. He just stood there, frozen. And Adanna, she turned around and walked away. When Adanna walked away from that scene, the world didn't move. I remember watching her back, shoulders tall, head held high, lace veil floating behind her like it had a life of its own. The sun hit her skin just right, but it wasn't romantic anymore. It was harsh, unforgiving. No music played, no camera flashed, no one spoke, just footsteps. Her heels striking the concrete like war drums. Kelvin didn't follow her. He stood there, still holding the envelope, eyes darting around like he was looking for someone to blame. The woman with the baby, who we later learned was named Precious, took a few steps back and muttered something about the truth coming out eventually. The priest had just arrived, his cassock barely on straight. He looked around and whispered to one of the groomsmen, "What's going on?" No one had words. Guests began murmuring. Aunties pulled their children closer. A few people started heading back to their cars. You could feel at that moment where everything unravels. I ran after Adanna. She had already made it to the villa. I found her in the backyard, barefoot, standing in the middle of the lawn in her wedding dress, staring at nothing. The wind had picked up, lifting her veil. Her makeup ruined by tears she hadn't even realized were falling. "Tolu," she said, her voice barely audible. I stood beside her in silence. Sometimes you don't speak. You just stand in the fire with your friend and let her know she's not burning alone. She finally looked at me. "I can't do it. I can't pretend you don't have to." She nodded slowly. "But everything's paid for. The guests are here. The food, the drinks," her voice cracked. "Tolu, I spent everything on this wedding. Everything." No. Her voice dropped and he knew. He knew that woman had his child and he still let me wear this dress. That broke me. This wasn't just heartbreak. This was betrayal laced with humiliation. The kind that scars your soul, not just your pride. The other girls soon joined us: Kioma, Bola, Tenny, and Ugochi. They circled her. No words, just arms around her like a shield. We all cried together. There was no shame in it. Even her mother came outside later. She didn't cry. She didn't ask questions. She simply reached for her daughter's hand and whispered, "My Ada, it's okay to stop. It's okay to walk away." And that's exactly what Adanna did. Meanwhile, back at the venue, chaos had replaced celebration. Guests were restless. Some demanded refunds, even though they hadn't paid a dime. Kelvin's family tried to manage the noise. The planner attempted to salvage the decor. The caterers had already started serving small chops just to pacify people. But the energy was off. Everyone knew something huge had happened. Gossip was already spreading on WhatsApp. Videos were being shared online. The DJ, now miraculously available, began setting up his gear, unaware that there might be no wedding at all. Kelvin stood alone near the altar area, tie loosened, eyes red. He kept looking toward the villa, hoping, praying maybe she'd come back out and say it was okay. But she didn't. Instead, by 2 p.m., I stepped into the reception tent and took the mic. "Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. Unfortunately, due to some unforeseen and very personal circumstances, the wedding ceremony will not proceed today." Gasps, murmurs. One woman shouted, "But why?" "Nah." I ignored it. "There's food and drink. Please, feel free to eat, enjoy yourselves, and thank you for understanding." Then I dropped the mic literally and walked out. That day, Adanna did not get married, but she did something stronger. She took her power back. Later that night, we stayed. With her in the villa, we helped her out of the gown, peeled off the heavy lashes, wiped the makeup from her face. We wrapped her in a soft Angora robe and tied her hair up in a scarf. We gave her warm pepper soup, a glass of red wine, and sat around her in a circle. We didn't talk about the wedding. We didn't talk about Kelvin. We talked about us, how we met, the stupid things we did in university, that time we got locked in during hostel inspection, our dreams for the future. Around midnight, Adanna finally spoke. "You know what hurts the most?" she asked. We waited. I wasn't even shocked. Deep down, I think I knew. There were signs. I just ignored them. Kioma held her hand. We all did. I just didn't want to be the girl whose wedding got canceled. I wanted the story. I wanted the pictures. I wanted the fairy tale. And now? I asked. Adanna smiled sadly. Now, I just want peace. The next morning, we returned to the venue one last time. Most of the decor had been cleared. Chairs stacked, tables wiped, cake crumbs on the ground, a few balloons still floating, deflating quietly in the corner. Adanna stood at the center of the empty tent and looked around. Then she did something none of us expected. She asked the photographer to take a few solo shots of her in her robe. No makeup, barefaced, eyes tired but fierce. Not for Instagram, she said. For me, too. Remember the day I chose myself and that moment? That's the real wedding. That's the real vow. To honor yourself when no one else does. The days after the wedding were quiet. Not just regular quiet hollow. You know that feeling when the party ends and you're left standing in the middle of the room, shoes off, makeup smeared, wondering what just happened? That's how the entire week felt. Adanna didn't leave her villa immediately. She needed the stillness, the silence, time to wrap her mind around everything that had happened. But even in that silence we stayed. We cleaned up the villa, returned unused bottles, sorted out the leftover food, returned the Aso IB fabrics to guests who never got to wear theirs. Bola contacted the decorator for refunds. Tenny had long arguments with the caterer about damaged items. Ugochi, bless her, even managed to take down some viral TikTok clips of the drama Adanna. She mostly stayed in her room, reading, sleeping, praying, but not hiding. There was something different about her. She wasn't broken, just processing. One morning I walked in with tea and found her journaling. Pages upon pages of what looked like thoughts, letters, confessions. I asked, "Are you okay?" She looked up, smiled faintly, and said, "I'm better than okay. I feel like I dodged a war disguised as a wedding." That line stuck with me. The friends who stayed, what truly amazed me wasn't just Adanna's strength, it was the strength of our sisterhood. We rallied around her like never before. Each of us took shifts to be by her side. Not because she asked, but because we knew that healing doesn't happen in isolation. We took her out to get fresh air, to breathe. One day to the beach, another to a painting class. She laughed for the first time during that painting class. The instructor told us to paint what peace looks like. Adanna painted a single woman standing in a forest with no makeup, just her natural hair blowing in the breeze. When the teacher asked, "Is she lonely?" Adanna smiled and replied, "No, she's finally free." Kelvin tries to crawl back. As expected, Kelvin tried to return. He sent messages, flowers, voice notes, even came to the villa once, begging to explain. I panicked, he said. I didn't want to lose her. I was going to tell her. Eventually. But eventually is not a safe place for truth. Adanna didn't say much. She let him talk. Let him sweat. Then she looked him straight in the eye and said, "If I marry you, I won't be building a home. I'll be stepping into a cage and calling at a castle. I'm not that girl anymore." Kelvin broke down, but that wasn't her concern anymore. The chapter was closed, sealed, and mailed back to sender. A different kind of celebration 3 weeks later. We threw Adanna a freedom party. No white gowns, no wedding songs, just a celebration of survival, wisdom, strength, and sisterhood. We rented a small rooftop lounge in Lekki. The decor was soft and intimate. Sunflowers, candles, and handwritten quotes taped to the walls. Like art. One quote read, "Sometimes the biggest blessing is the wedding that didn't happen." Adanna wore a simple Ankara dress. No weave, no lashes. Her smile was effortless, not practiced. She danced that night hard, like she was shaking off the last remaining dust of pain from her body. We all danced too. It wasn't about moving on. It was about moving forward. What the world saw soon, word got out. People heard what happened. The videos, the whispers, the headlines on gossip blogs. Lekki bride walks away from groom after baby mama crashes wedding. They wanted interviews, sponsorships, deals. Adanna refused them all. "This isn't content. This is my life," she told me. Instead, she started volunteering with a local counseling group for women recovering from public humiliation and relationship trauma. She began giving private talks. No cameras, no hashtags. Just raw, honest words from one woman to another, and me. Watching my best friend rise from that wreckage changed me. It made me redefine love, loyalty, and the meaning of success. Not every story ends with a kiss. Sometimes, it ends with a closed door and a steady heartbeat. I stopped chasing perfect love and started building a perfect relationship with myself. Because of Adanna, I learned that you can walk away and still win. You can grieve what never was and still be grateful. You can be whole even after something breaks. They said it was a ruined wedding, but it was actually a rebirth. Adanna didn't just lose a groom, she gained her power. She shed the version of herself that tolerated betrayal and stepped into a version that demanded truth. She showed the world that walking away from a lie is not weakness, it's wisdom. That being alone doesn't mean being unloved. And that sometimes the real wedding is the one you have with yourself. That day taught me something deep. No matter how perfect you plan something, life will test your strength at the worst possible time. But it's not the chaos that defines the moment, it's how you respond to it. Adanna taught me grace under it. Fire and strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to walk away with your head high. So if you're planning a wedding or any big event, remember, be flexible, be ready, and most importantly, choose peace over pressure because sometimes the most beautiful endings come after a terrible beginning.